Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Pursuing You podcast. I'm your host, Isabel Arias, and today I have a really special guest. I know I say that every single time that I have a guest on, but I genuinely, not that I genuinely only mean it this time, but this is someone who I'm, with pretty much all the time, and I am so grateful for her. She's an amazing woman of God, and honestly has been such a pivotal, I don't know, God honestly brought her the perfect time in my journey in my faith, and she's just been so incredible. So today with me I have Ashlyn Ansel. Mm-hmm. I'm I've never asked you what your last name is, but I know it's welcome to the episode.
Thank you. I'm so excited and so grateful to be here.
Yeah, and guys, if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you should check it out on YouTube because we're filming right now. And yeah, honestly, I love sometimes just watching podcasts on YouTube, you know? Okay, Ashlyn, so tell us who you are, what you do, and are you single, married, how old you are, and just all the fun things about yourself.
That's a loaded question, but hi, I'm Ashlyn Ansel. I'm originally from Ohio. But I actually moved to Dallas about a year and a half ago for a job, and it has just been really cool and interesting to see the way that God has worked in my life in the past year and a half. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of trials, a lot of scary moments, and a lot of really cool ones. But I'm 24. I am single. Upon moving to Dallas a year and a half ago, I got out of a almost 6-year relationship. So that was really interesting, moving to a brand new city, and kind of just felt like it was a brand new chapter from scratch, starting my life here. I didn't know anyone. Yeah. I had just gotten out of a 6-year relationship. Didn't know a single soul in the city. So I really had to build my life from scratch here after having so many established connections in Ohio, whether it's from my hometown or my college town. In my college town, I could walk down the street and 30 people would say hi because they knew who I was, and I was super involved, to now being in a city of Dallas where I was just no one knows who I am. I don't know who anyone is. And honestly, I think, not to get into things already, but I think that put me in a little bit of a isolation season of, I went through moments of not feeling seen, but then also moments of not wanting to be seen. I remember wanting, as I moved here, wanting to get involved in a church here. And before I moved, I had actually heard of Shoreline City, had followed them on Instagram. But for some reason, whenever I moved here, I could not get myself to go in person. I think I was scared of actually being seen. And I think, coming from a past where I've had previous church hurt, or, we just go through certain things in life that it's hard.
Yeah. And I think that the enemy also does a great job at trying to isolate us, in the sense of, he tries to trick us in our minds, and he's like, why would, you just had sex with someone that you didn't know, or you just did this, or you just had a night out and you ended up in the hospital. Why would you go to church? That's not keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Wants to keep you isolated. Those people are better than you. Don't go, and I feel like he definitely tries to keep us isolated. But you have to stand strong and be no. And I think that's what, you've done so well, is you were you know what? No, I'm going to actually dive deep into community, into the church, which I don't know how long you've been going to Shoreline for, but I just made a year.
Well, so when I moved here, because I was so scared to go in person, I was listening online for a few months, consistently, until the new building opened in December. December 3rd was the first day that I actually fully went in person, showed up at the building.
The new building?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
So I was listening online for months before that, but it took until December for me to finally go in person and actually have that moment. And it was hard, like, going, sitting there by yourself, and you don't want people to see you,
Yeah.
but then you also at
It's like
Shoreline City.
You want to slip in and out.
Yeah. And you just like don't want people to see you. You don't want people to see that you're hurting or anything like that. But what I love about Shoreline City is they do see people and they do see the hurting. And just walking in, everyone saw me. And I was so afraid of it being a bad thing, but it wasn't. Like, I felt so welcome and so at home. And like, that's why I've continued to go back to this day, is just you feel not only the presence of God there, but also just what I said about Shoreline City and like why I want to go back there so much is because it's like I finally found the people who have the same heart that I do.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a long time finding that, like whether it's with friendships, with relationships, or whatever it might be. But when you find people who have the same heart as you, it is just like the sweetest thing ever.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's so cool because now we both serve in different ministries. Like, you serve with Littles, I serve with J High, and we both love doing what we do. Like, it's like literally part of our like Sunday like, it's not like, oh yeah, maybe I'll serve this weekend. It's like, oh no, like I'm gonna be at church tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. and stay there until like 1 or 1:30. And it's cool because we don't even like, we never complain about it. And it's just one of those things that I think Shoreline City does so well, is like, I remember when I walked into Shoreline, like I barely knew anyone, but I still had like so many people coming up to me like, oh my gosh, like, whatever, like, are you new here? And I was like, what? Like, my old church was so big. People wouldn't even ask, like, are you new here? Like, new people are coming in all the time, And so it's something that I really appreciate about Shoreline. And I think it's something that they do so well. How did you get out of that isolation? Like, what was the last string for you of you being like, you know what, like, I think I'm going to actually attend and go in person?
Honestly, there were just so many points from the time that I moved here in the end of August until I finally went in person in December. There were so many moments that listening online, I was just like, I felt like that message was for me.
Convicted.
Like, I felt like Earl was speaking to me through all of those messages online. And I was just like, I want to go in person. And I could feel that itch of like wanting to go in person every week. But I just like kept giving into the fear of like, no one wants you there.
Yeah.
Like, you're too far gone. Like, all those different things. I
think that's something, not to cut you off, sorry, but I think that's something that happens a lot, like when you move to a new city. It's like you have to be willing to say yes to the hard things, and it's so rewarding once you do, because once you did start going to Shoreline and you started getting plugged in and you got, plugged into Connect Group, and you met, that one day when we like brought like 15 girls with us, like it becomes so rewarding. And it's like one of those things where it's like all the hard things, all the hard yeses lead to so much growth. And it's something that I feel like is so true, especially when you move to a new city.
Yeah. I think that like a thing was too, is I've always really like kind of internalized my relationship with God, and it's always been something that I think I've really valued myself, but I never really felt comfortable like speaking out on it for so long, because I never felt like growing up that I like knew enough about the Bible to be talking about it. Right. Or the enemy tells us like, well, you have certain things in your past that no one's gonna think that you're this, I don't know, whatever that might be. You know exactly what I'm talking about, and I can't get the words out right now, but I think like I was so scared to even like talk about my faith or talk about my relationship with God, knowing that like I have no idea what people would think of me if I actually said that.
Right.
But seeing so many people like in my walk of life over the past year, like outwardly speaking about it and the impact that it's had on me, it has really given me the confidence to want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to have people who, when you talk about those things, are going to like shy away from you because you're talking about God openly, or they're going to be like, oh, when did you become this like religious person, and it's like,
that was my
actually
thing.
like
Yeah.
this has been me the whole time. It's
Yeah.
just I'm actually now
Sharing
talking about it and
Yeah.
sharing about it.
That's how I was on social media. Like, especially, you know, Ohio, New Jersey, like growing up north, I feel like it's just not, you're not in the Bible Belt. It's not how it is here where you walk into places. Mind you, you're not even walking into a church. You're walking into like a restaurant with like new people, meeting new people, and people are like, "Oh, like where do you go to church?" It's not even like a question here.
Yeah.
It's like funny. Like it's like almost, I feel as if 75% of the people in Dallas are Christian almost, but that's what it feels like at least, because the Christian pool is just so big. But in like when I was in Jersey, I remember when God just like radically just felt his hand on my life, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to give my life to Christ." And then it took me like a year to post something about like a Bible verse or something, because I was like, I was also so ashamed, you know, like when you're living one foot in the world and one foot with God, it's like, why would these people even care what I even have to say if my life looks exactly like them? The only difference is I spend 2 hours at church on Sundays and they don't, you know? And that's what I was so ashamed about. I was like, I'm doing all the things, I'm drinking, I'm smoking, like, you know, well, at that point I had stopped that, but like
yeah. No, I get that. And I think it's like a hard thing to get yourself to the point where you finally actually like openly start talking about your faith. But I guess like there's just been some things over the past year and a half since I've moved here that have just been so hard, and like not like rock bottom in a bad way, but like rock bottom for my heart. Like a lot of hurt, a lot of scary times, a lot of uncertainty, whether it's like with jobs or relationships or friendships or whatever it might be. There's just been so many times that it has just been so hard that the only thing that's been able to get me out of it is my relationship with God, to the point that like that's all I can explain to somebody is like, that's the only thing getting me through is my faith.
And I think I got to witness like that season where you were looking for a job for like, it was like what felt like forever, like 4 months or maybe 5 months. I don't know how long it was, but even through that, like I just watched you stay so faithful, and you were like, he's got me. Even on days when, you know, even on days when you didn't believe it yourself, it was like, no, like I know that he's got me, and you know, I know that whatever it takes, I know that he's got me, and I'm gonna trust him. And you even started, you know, serving, like giving your time to Shoreline. And I think that just goes to show like your heart, who you are as a person. Like you are definitely someone who like, you know, puts her trust in the Lord. And I think like you reap the fruit from it, that, you know, you reap what you sow.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like it gave me a whole new perspective on what it actually means to surrender to God and trust in his plans. Cause I think that's one of the things that I feel like I've struggled with in my relationship with God, is like actually giving it all to him. And I think that, you know, God's always been something important to me. Like I was baptized when I was like 7, 8 years old. Like God's always been a part of my life, but I don't think that God was always first in my life. And I think that I let my priorities kind of get out of order and not in like the proper order, to the point that I was like putting certain things above that. I definitely was putting work above that. I was idolizing my job. I was idolizing a relationship that was not serving me well at all. And I think that it's really easy to see your circumstances and the chaos in your life and be like, God, why are you doing this to me? Like, I thought you were good. Why are you giving me all these bad things? And honestly, I think something that like I really learned in the past like few years of the hardships of my relationship before it ended is like, God doesn't always give us something to specifically to hurt us, but sometimes he will give us chaos in our lives to like get us to walk away. And you know, I was in a relationship that did not serve me well at all, but I, you know, we all as humans want to be loved. And I think that I was prioritizing wanting to be loved over like actually going for a love that I deserved.
And for someone listening right now that feels like they're in a relationship that they've been in for so long, they're like, I can't even imagine my life without this person, but this person is not leading me well. This person is not wanting to wait until marriage, or doesn't have the same convictions as me, and might even be cheating on me. Like, what would you tell the girl or the guy on the other side of this podcast that might be facing like the same thing, or how you felt that one time, and like even encourage them to like leave that relationship until you both get to a place where you're both healthy.
Yeah. Honestly, I just like want to encourage somebody who is in that relationship of like, I see you, like, I know you just want to be loved. And it's so hard because you give your all to somebody who like just can't love you properly or can't love you the way that you know deep down you deserve to be loved. But I think the thing is when you don't recognize your worth and you don't stand up for your worth and what you know you deserve to be loved, then you're going to keep settling for what you don't deserve. And I think the hardest thing I had to learn is that the way that we love ourselves sets the example for how other people love us. And that's a really hard thing.
That's so good.
That's a really hard thing to like face because whenever you like see people treating you poorly, it's easy to be like, well, that person just like is treating me so bad, blah, 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 blah. But like, we're putting up with that. We are telling that person by allowing them to stay in our lives and treat us that way, that that's okay, that that's acceptable. And until we get to the point where we are like, actually, no, I don't deserve that. And I'm not afraid to walk away from what I don't deserve.
Setting boundaries.
Yeah. Actually, that's a huge learning I had in dating last year. Met a really incredible godly man that taught me the importance of actually setting boundaries with people. And I think that for so long I was trying to set boundaries with people, but in a people pleasing way, that like I had boundaries of like certain things, whether it's like physical or whatever it might be. But at the same time, there were certain boundaries that I was like, okay, well, like if that'll get him to like want
like
me or like commit to me or like want to be in a relationship with me, then like, okay, I can let him like push that boundary a little bit.
Right. And that is not something that we should be allowing. Like, for all the girlies listening, like, I know, trust me, I know you want to be liked, you want to be in a relationship. The holidays are coming up. It's all the questions at Thanksgiving and Christmas, like, where's the boyfriend? And you're like, I'm trying, but and like, I get it. Like, I know that we as girls, we want to be loved, we want to be seen, we want to be liked by the cute guy and all of that. But if we are with someone who is pushing our boundaries time and time again, even like whatever it is, whether
even
it's
if
physical,
it's not physical,
physical or spirit, like whatever, I don't know, whatever your boundaries are. And if you don't have any boundaries, I recommend you maybe sit down and write some. Because I heard Craig Rochelle one time say, like, this could be the line, but even like the goal is not to tiptoe closest to the line and be like, okay, let me see how close I can get to the line. Like, if your boundary is, okay, I want to wait until marriage, and you're just tiptoeing around that line, it's like, sin is sin, and I don't know. I just felt like we needed to call that out, because I think there's times when in my life I regret so much letting a guy convince me that, oh, like, come on, like, I really like you or whatever, like, oh, come over, da-da-da, and I'm just like, ugh, like, why did I, like, I should have stuck true to what I believed for, and what I have believed for so long, and it's God wants what's best for us, and someone who is leading you to the bedroom instead of leading you to Christ is not that.
Yeah. And I guess while we're kind of like on this topic of like relationships and boundaries, and definitely talking about physical ones, I really just want to be super transparent and vulnerable in this moment and just like be honest with like when I was in my 6-year relationship, like him and I did not wait for marriage. That was not something that he wanted. And I remember being young and being like, oh, well, like this is like what I want to do. Like I want to be with one person for the rest of my life, and like that's important to me. Like I don't just do that or do that with anyone type thing. But I think, you know, sometimes people will manipulate you into getting things that you want, which is a really sad thing.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to go through a relationship where somebody's like manipulating you and saying all the right things to get
everything
you to do
you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And
and telling you, oh, well, we're going to get married, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's okay. Like,
technically we're already married. We've been together for so long.
Yeah. So I definitely just want to say, like, for anyone out there who like has not waited for marriage, like, that's okay. You can come back from that. You're not too far gone. You do not have to just continue giving your body away to other people just because you've given it away to someone else before. I firmly believe that despite what your actual beliefs are as far as religion or God or whatever it might be, you know, if you're somebody who's like, I don't believe in saving myself for marriage, or I don't believe in waiting until marriage, like that's okay. Like I respect whatever, you know, belief that you have in your heart, and that's totally okay. Like I did not wait before I had sex with somebody either. But I will say that the reason I think it's even brought up in the Bible, or the reason I think that we are even encouraged by God to wait, is not to take something away from us.
Say it.
It's actually to give us something so much more with the person that we're going to be with for the rest of our life. And that's security, that's intimacy, that's trust, connection, and also just
the heartache that comes with giving. Like, we were not made to be intimate with so many different people because it leads to so many different heartbreaks, and we were just not created for that. And that is the reason why there is so much depression, there is so much anxiety, there is so much suicide. Like, we put our worth in those things and our value in those things, and that is not what we were created for. We were not created to, you know, be, okay, I'm gonna sleep with this guy, I'm gonna sleep with this guy, and you know, and like I'm someone who did that in high school, and like that was not it for me. Like, I do not recommend, because I thought that the only way I could get a guy was by giving him my body and by giving him that. And I literally, there was a time where I was like, oh, like, you know, like I just did not care. I didn't care about myself. Like what you were saying earlier, it's so true. Like, I did not care about my worth. I did not care about my body. I did not care. I did not treasure my body the way I do now. It's like, oh, my body is actually a temple. Like,
so good.
1 Corinthians 6:19-20. Like, our body is a temple. Like, we have to take care of it. And for so long, I just did not care. And it comes from like childhood wounds of like, oh, if my dad wasn't giving me attention, I wanted to get attention from like the guys who were giving me attention. And so the first guy that was like, oh, you're pretty, I was like running into his arms. And so, you know, I think that it's one of those things where, which it's so cool because we actually, this is not how we intended to start that episode.
I was going to say,
but I love
this has been a tangent, but I think like,
I think
so
the
Holy Spirit is speaking through us right now, and I hope that like we're unlocking freedom in some single gals' lives, or even people in relationships. Like, I don't know, like I wish somebody would have sat me down and said, like, Ashlyn, if you would just walk away from this thing that you know is not serving you well, there's so much more for you on the other side of it. And so, like, if you're in that boat and you're in a relationship where you're like, you know, like this person just like does not treat me well, this person does not love me well, if it's like a toxic relationship that, you know, is not healthy and if it's not calling you higher to be a better person, then I don't know. I don't know if I want to go there, but I firmly
go there. Why not?
I firmly believe that like the person that you're supposed to be with in life is supposed to call you higher and bring out the best in you. And when you're in a relationship where you feel like the person's bringing out the worst in you, I think that's a red flag. Like in my past relationship, I was so unhappy because I was not being treated the way that a woman should be treated. I was not being respected. I was not being valued. I was not being loved properly. It was very much a convenience of just wanting somebody.
Yeah.
And I don't stand for that now. Like, I don't want to just be somebody's like desire
so now,
to have.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And like, we'll talk about healing and all of that. But like now, you know, from everything that you've learned in your past relationships and everything, like when you do sit down on like a first date or a second date, like what are some intentional questions that you're asking that either let you know that you're like, oh, I don't know if this person is it for me, or just by like what you're asking? So I feel like you're really intentional with like questions that you ask.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very intentional with the questions I ask, but I also am a very intentional listener. I'm actually very careful about the questions that I ask because I think that sometimes when you ask people pointed questions, they're just going to tell you what you want to hear. Especially if it's on a first date and you're like, well, what are you looking to get out of this? And like, what's your relationship with God like? And what is whatever? Like, I honestly actually kind of avoid asking those questions, and I try to get to know the person first. I personally feel like I'm a very intuitive and discerning person that I can read a lot about somebody without having to even ask them anything.
Y'all, God baptized her with intuitive and discernment when she was 7 years old, for sure.
Yeah, this girl, my family can attest to that. Like, literally the amount of times that I text or call my mom and I was like, my intuition is always right. Like, I'm sorry, but if I have a gut feeling about something, that Holy Spirit gut feeling has never been wrong.
And he definitely gave you like a little bit of psychologist in her, because she is like the person that you go to whenever you're having like boy problems, friend problems. Ash is that friend who doesn't tell you what you want to hear. She tells you what you need to hear. And it's
and it's hard. It's hard to hear somebody tell you what you don't necessarily want to hear. But I
like not feed into your ego.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's kind of, it's kind of convicting and like doesn't always feel great in the moment. Like if I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a specific example, but for instance, if you come and tell me that like a boy broke your heart and that you want to like go get revenge, I'm going to be like, actually,
why was I about to like literally say that?
Yeah. Like,
well, I actually had that, remember, with, we won't say his name, but
yeah. So for example, like, you know, a boy broke Bella's heart, and
he did.
You know, she was really upset about it, and she was like, "Screw this! I'm done with this. I don't want to even talk to him. I'm gonna block him, blah, 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 whatever it might be." And I was like, "Bella, babe, he is a hurting man, and he is running away from the connection that you two share, and like that is like something I'm so passionate about. Is like, guys." Like, well, okay, I'm actually talking to the girls when I said guys. I'm actually talking to the girls, but I say guys a lot to like talk.
The many.
Yeah, whatever. I'm talking to the girls on this one. Boys, men, whatever you want to refer to them as, they struggle with their self-worth too. It's not just us. It's not just us who don't feel worthy of love. It's not just us who feel like it's too good to be true when they meet somebody who is really great. Like, men struggle with that too. And I know that we get frustrated with men when they don't commit to us or they run away, but also like they need that space to sit with their feelings, figure out what they're feeling. We live in a generation that puts so much like toxic masculinity, saying that like emotions are so bad for guys to feel. And it's like, no, that's a human experience. Like, yeah, like, you know, feelings are not the focus. You know, they shouldn't be the focus, and they shouldn't like deem the way that we like live our lives by any means.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we have to like feel our emotions. We can't just like go to everything and like numb those emotions and like push everything down and avoid everything.
And
but
that's the thing. Guys struggle with being one, vulnerable, but two, just like opening up that like side to them of like, okay, wait, like I don't know if I want to share with her how I feel, because what if she doesn't feel the same way? Guys are, and this is like, again, to the girls, like guys already have to like go through so much with shooting their shot and like doing all that, being afraid of, you know, you can't be afraid of rejection. It's like one of those things that's like, okay, she either accepts me or rejects me. And like guys already do a lot. And I think, for example, like when that did happen, I was pissed. I was really upset. Let's be real. Like and it was funny because me and Ashlyn had I think it was like our third time hanging out, and this girl's like we're like sitting at lunch, and I'm telling her, I'm like, yeah, like we're meeting tomorrow at coffee, and I'm just gonna just be like, you are not a man of God. Like, how do you serve at the church and like treat girls this way? And I was literally gonna go off on this man. But luckily,
and I was like, Bella,
God sent me a little angel.
This man's hurting.
Yeah.
And I think that
it transformed though the entire conversation. Like literally, I even cried.
I had to talk some sense into her.
I even cried in the conversation, which never would I ever, like, if you would have told me like prior that I was gonna do that, I'd be like, absolutely not. But like I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna be vulnerable, and I'm gonna do that. And like
vulnerability can be our most powerful thing. I think we as a society label it as sometimes a weakness, and I would just like to say that I think that a vulnerable man is actually the most masculine like thing ever.
Well,
like,
and that's
somebody who can be.
When I was vulnerable with him, I almost said his name. We would have to bleep it out. But when I was vulnerable with him, he was vulnerable back. Like he literally, we give like, sometimes it takes one to like be one, you know?
I am a firm believer in that like, you know, women are a lot more emotional and men are a lot more logical. So men naturally struggle with their emotions, and that's frustrating for us women. We want men to be like, oh, I love you, I want to be with you, I want to commit to you, blah, 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 blah. But like, if we are not like being open first and foremost, then like they're probably not going to open. And there's so much power in like, you know, being just authentic. Like, this is going on a whole other tangent separately, but like on the topic of dating and the topic of just like, you know, trying to meet people or trying to meet your person, like it's doing you a disservice to show up on dates trying to impress somebody and like trying to be what you think that they want, versus like when you show up as the most authentic version of yourself, that is when you're going to find like the person who's actually right for you. And I can attest to that. Like, one of the best dates I've ever been on was one that happened on a whim, to the point that I had no time to think about it before I went on it. Had no time to think about it, had no time to prepare for it, had no time to think about it. Literally rolled up in sweatpants and my hair was greasy from the day before, had like dry shampoo in my hair.
Not gonna lie.
And I had no expectations going into it. Didn't know this man, and I was just like, okay, if he doesn't love me at my worst, then he doesn't deserve me at my best.
We always
but genuinely just showed up as my authentic self. I didn't have time to think about trying to be anybody else but myself, and started just having like very deep conversations, to the point that like I was like, oh my God, I've never said some of these things out loud before. Why am I like why am I opening up this much to a stranger? But I think that's the important thing, is like when you find somebody that you feel safe to have those conversations with, like it starts with a man being able to make you feel safe around him. Feeling safe and feeling calm and like peaceful around them was something that like I had never experienced before in dating at all. And I'm sitting across from this man being like, I'm so confused. I think I like him, but I don't have butterflies. And I'm like, I'm so used to just like having those butterflies in my stomach anytime that
Being
I've like
nervous.
been on a date. Yeah. And
Wait,
literally,
what are some of the green flags that you look for when you're dating?
well, now that I've experienced that, definitely pace, like a calm nervous system. Because like in that moment when that happened, I was like, I'm confused. I think I like it, but like, why don't I have butterflies? And I just like hear in my head, like, he doesn't trigger your anxiety, Ashlyn. And I was like,
mic drop.
I was like, who just said that?
God, is that you?
I was like, what's going on here? Also, like, when you find somebody who does give you peace, that is so important, because being with somebody who just gives you anxiety, and like, I think a misconception that I had in my previous relationship is that trust could be built and trust could be earned. And like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, trust is built and, you know, develops over time and like is earned in a certain way. But if there's like not a level of trust at the beginning, like it's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's
another one.
In a relationship of 6 years, I never felt like I could trust the person that I was with. And I was constantly on the edge of my seat, constantly had a pit in my stomach, constantly just was like, I feel like this person's cheating on me. I feel like he's being unfaithful. I feel like, I don't know, like I constantly felt like there was somebody else, and I constantly felt like I had to compete for him to like want me over like anyone else. Right. And honestly, like he made me feel that way. Like we would go out to a bar, and like when we were in college, we'd go out to a bar and he'd be like, oh, well, this girl just like came up and talked to me. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to compete with somebody.
You want a cookie? Like good for you. Like,
like, no, I don't want to compete with somebody.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. What are some habits that you've started with becoming content in your singleness? Because I feel like this is something that you do so well, and it's like being like, I think you've gotten to a pretty healthy place of just being content in your singleness, and now you're back in your dating girl era. And so like, what are like some things where you're like, okay, I had to do this, whether it was healing or, you know, putting God first?
I think that it took if I'm honest, it took going through a period of discontentment to learn what I needed to earn the contentment. You know, when I first moved here, I was very discontent being single. I had just gone out of a 6-year relationship. I was like, I don't want to be single. I don't want to like not have a person to cuddle up on the couch with and watch a movie with anymore. Like, I don't want to have somebody to not like talk to about my day, or like, you know, when I'm having a hard week, like don't have somebody to call anymore. Like, I think it was like grieving like that person, and then like also not knowing a single soul in the city. I'm like, I didn't have any friends at that point.
Felt lonely.
So I was, you know, getting on all the dating apps. I was going on a ton of Hinge dates, and I quickly found that like, I don't know, I'm kind of just a person that like, I know when I know, and I know when, or like, and then I know that like you're it or you're not type thing. And so like I kept going on these dates, and
I wish you could, before you continue, you went on that date. She went on a date for like the first time in a year, right? This week.
Yeah.
And automatically, like I call her right after. I'm so excited. And she's like, he just doesn't compare. Like you can't compete where you don't compare. Like it's just not it. And I was like, Ash, like I feel like you might be being too hard. I wish you could read the text that he sent you.
Okay, so for context, my intuition's never wrong. The date actually did go really well. Really great guy, really sweet. You know, but I just was just like, you know, I didn't feel like we were like equally yoked. And
For context means, if you don't know what equally yoked means, it means like you're at the same level with God as like that person, as in like.
And even if you're not looking at it in a biblical standpoint, like I think just like equally yoked in general in life of like, are we wanting the same type of future? Are we like heading towards our future at the same pace? Are we like wanting the same goals? Are we like wanting to build the same things? Like, I don't know. Like, I just think like you're walking in alignment with somebody, or like you're going down completely different paths. Or like, for instance, like in my previous relationship, like I was, pushing forward, going after my dreams, but this person was like holding me back because like he didn't want to grow. He didn't want to acknowledge those areas. He didn't want to grow with me. And so like it was just holding me back. And so like that's where like being unequally yoked is actually like really harmful to you, whether you're a religious person or not. If you're not with somebody who is like calling you higher, pursuing you to be better, and like you both bringing out the best versions of each other, then like, I don't know, like, is that really a relationship you want to be in for the rest of your life? And yeah, I know as much as like we want to be loved, it's like, are you willing to settle for somebody who doesn't even love you properly for the rest of your life, just for the sake of like saying you have somebody, or saying you have somebody who loves you, but they don't even love you fully?
Yeah, and I actually, there's this thing, because equally yoked in the Bible, it's talking about the yoke of an oxen. And online, I was like doing some research about it, and it says the yoke keeps them in sync with each other, so that one does not pull faster than the other. If they do not pull at the same pace, the load will become off balance, and they will not be able to effectively be moved. So the yoke serves the purpose of providing balance, as mentioned in the definition of the word. And it's so important. Like, 2 oxen can pull more than one, obviously. Like, it's like me saying, well, I can strive better being alone my whole life. Like, no. Like, I know that I can build an empire with someone if if we're both running that same race at the same pace. And it's really good to have that kind of discernment, and even just like knowing, okay, wait, I don't know, like, I don't think that you're my person. And honestly, just that's like a part of dating. It's like, you're going on a ton of first dates, and like being open to that, and like just,
yeah,
just, I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, we got lost on a little tangent there.
Yeah.
About that, but basically, a very long story short, I kind of just like knew by the end of the day, I was like, this is a really great guy, and he's super sweet, super genuine, and like has great values, but I was just like, he's just not my person.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I don't know that everybody like experiences that kind of intuition, but I just like was like, like I just knew it wasn't it. Yeah, and I could feel that. Yeah. And then it was weird because I could just like tell something like shifted by the end of the night. And I was like, okay, like, as good as this was, like, I just don't think this is my person. And and turns out, it
oh, you're gonna say it.
Turns out the reason that this sounds so silly.
Man's was heartbroken.
This man told me he couldn't go on a second date with me because he is allergic to cats, after I told him that I had 2 cats. And like, it sounds so silly, but like, I was actually very grateful that he like brought that up, because like, we're both at the point where like we are looking for like our life partner. Like, I am looking for my husband, and he is looking for a wife. So it's like, as much as like you want to like date and you want to have somebody, you don't want to have the wrong person. And like, personally, I love my cats. I'm not going to give them up for a man that I just met. So like, yeah, I'm grateful that he told me that up front.
There's the door.
And like, I don't expect somebody to like want to cater to my life either. And so it's like, that sounds like a silly reason to not go on a second date, but I was actually appreciative of that. I'm like, let's not drag this out longer than we need to. If ultimately, like, we know it's not going to work in the long term. Like, my cats are 2 years old. They're going to live, God willing, a long life, and hopefully at least another 18 years.
Amen. Amen to that.
And like, at that point, like, that is, a deal breaker for somebody who is allergic to cats. Like, so I get that. So I know it sounds so silly, but it's just like, deal breakers are deal breakers for a reason. And like, there's no point to keep like going on dates with somebody if you know it's not going to work in the long term. Yeah. And I know you like want that attention, or you want that person to like spend time with, but it's just like, what's the point?
If I will never understand when girls say, and this will be like our last little tangent before we close out, like, I will never understand when a girl says, oh, well, I can't see myself marrying him, but it's just fun right now. Like, it's just like, it's like, why are you wasting his time? Like, if you know that you're certain that you're not going to marry him ever, or that there is really no future there other than like you guys just messing around, going on dates and having all the fun in the world, like, what, like, why?
And so like, I mean, people have to get to the point where they realize that they would rather, wait for the right person than to just settle for the wrong one. And I think that's where I'm at, is I'm like, I stopped, like, the last first date that I went on was in October of last year. And then November of this year was the first date that I've been on in over a year. Because I just felt like God was really like, hey, there's some like things in your heart that are like still very broken.
Yeah.
And before you can be in another happy, healthy relationship, or not another, before you can be in a healthy and happy relationship after being in a not so healthy one, we have a work in your heart that we need to do. And I just like really felt like that was God saying like, we need to just like take this time for ourselves to like focus on my relationship with myself, focus on my relationship with God, focus on like my relationship with my friends. Like, I was, meeting people and meeting friends like in the city and like wanting to focus on that.
And you've reached, and I texted Ash this and she's like, yeah, you're content, and you're saying, you've reached like a point of contentment in your singleness when you're on a date with a guy and you're like, oh my gosh, I'd much rather be with any one of my friends than on this date right now. Like, when you reach a point like that, when you're like, I don't even want this like random guy's love, like, even though he's like,
you're like not in it for the validation anymore. You're like, okay, actually I'm done like going on dates for attention and validation anymore. Like, that's where I've been at. I'm like, it's exhausting to just go on dates just like craving attention. And then you're like, why am I craving attention for people that I don't actually like?
Right.
Yeah. Like,
guys, so I feel like we should do like a second part 2, because I feel like there's so much that we had planned.
I feel like between both of us, like, we could talk about all these topics all day.
Forever. But I would love if you guys have like either redemption, like love stories, like dating stories of like, okay, God redeemed this, or just like really failed first dates. If you have those stories, or if you want to send voice memos in, our email is pursuingyoupodcast@gmail.com. But we do have to close out for today because we're going to reach our limit. And I love that. But yeah, I think we should do a part 2 because there's so much. I didn't even ask. I think I asked 2 questions that I had written down and the rest was just Holy Spirit. So thank you so much, Ashlyn, for coming in. And
thank you for having me.
I can't wait for part 2.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And then if you can, leave comments, drop comments, or leave a review. But yeah, till next week. Bye, guys.